This is Ryan Elliott for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. We're in Sheffield. I'll be joined by trainer Shane McGuigan. Shane, been a while since I bugged you for an interview. How are you?
Good, thanks, mate. How's life?
Good, thank you for asking. Been a good old week so far. Let's start with why you're here. Chris Billam-Smith defended his European title this weekend. Chris told me that after the McCarthy fight, he came back in the dressing room and the first thing you said to him was, "What the F was that?" Do you want to see what he's truly capable of this weekend?
Yeah, I think that was a bit. I'm not sure if I said that, but I said to him, "You're much better than that, and we have to make sure you don't get dragged into wars early on, because even though he's physical and he's good on the inside, he still has to be able to break people down with a jab and dissect people at world level. They're all tough. They all can take a shot. They can all deliver a shot. They're all strong on the inside. So you're winning fights on physicality, and you need to be able to. You've got a boxing brain. You've got the ability to figure people out and gradually work on things throughout round on round. But you haven't showed that for a while. So not for a while, but definitely in that last one. And with Dukai, he was a bit happy to. He just did give someone the people's elbow there. He was a bit happy to sort of try and just stop him and beat him up, and neglected his jab as well. So, look, this guy at the weekend, he's a European guy, he's a big tall guy, throws a lot of punches. You can't just maul him and try and walk him down and beat him up. You got to work behind the jab, and you have to be sensible with your attacks.
Chris has told me he wants to look good this weekend, but he and I were speaking about the world rankings he's actually got at the minute. He's ranked very high, 7 or above, all across the board. Lawrence, obviously works with you as well, Lawrence Okoli, he's trying to clean up the division at the minute, wants all them belts. Chris keeps on winning, he's going to be in a great position eventually to maybe pick up one of them.
Yeah, we're just going to have an in-house gym fight, really. Just sell it on pay-per-view, no tickets, we should probably do it on pay-per-view platform like Boxing Social or Triller or something like that. No, it's great. He's in a very good position. He beat Tommy McCarthy, who was highly ranked throughout the governing bodies as well. Where Chris, even before that fight, was highly ranked. So it's good. It's good to see him in that position. You obviously got Lawrence, who's WBO world champion, but he wants to unify. We're trying to sort stuff out. Obviously, there's the Igorov versus Gulamarian fight at the end of this month. I think they might have even pushed it to December. I'm not sure now. And then you've got Makabu, and you've got Bradis as well. So they're the rivals, but we'll see which one comes to the table. I think Lawrence is probably going to be out early next year, I don't know, February sort of time, and that's been penciled in. So let's hope that 258 and Eddie can deliver something big for Lawrence Okoli.
I was going to come on to Lawrence. After Bradis' last fight, there was a lot of talk from not only Bradis but the Sauerlands about making an offer and wanting to come to Latvia. Lawrence welcomed that. He wants that fight. Yeah. From what I gather, there's been a bit of radio silence. Has there been anything at all on that fight?
I don't know what's going on. I mean, I'm asking for it, and I don't manage Lawrence Okoli, and I don't promote him. So, they have obviously got their plans and what they want to do, but from a coach's perspective, and where Lawrence as well, because I'm the closest to Lawrence Okoli, me and him both talk on a regular basis. We see each other in the gym all the time. We understand that if we go Gulamarian next, or the winner of that fight, or even Makabu next, then that fight with Bradis is further away, and I think he's like 35, 36 years of age. Not that he's not in his peak, but he wants to make big money, and the big money is up at heavyweight. Unless you have a big rivalry like Lawrence Okoli, you can do it on a pay-per-view platform. So, we're trying to push that fight forward, and we're going to have to speak to Eddie and going to speak to 258 to see where they're at, but then also speak to Wasserman and the Sauerlands on the other side, because if we can get it made, why wouldn't we? It's a huge fight, and Lawrence wants to take it. He doesn't want to be at cruiserweight for very long. He wants to do as much as he can at cruiserweight. Hopefully, he can keep the governing bodies and be able to get the undisputed crown. But that's the goal. That's the main goal at the end of this before moving up to heavyweight. But if you know what these things are like, there's lots of politics in boxing, and sometimes you have to fight mandatories and stuff like that. And he's in the stage now in his career that he doesn't want to get up for guys that are not really going to challenge him. And like that last fight against Prasovic, I could see a big difference in his mindset. He's always motivated, but he needs to be challenged. He spent his whole life being challenged when it comes to boxing. He was in the Olympics before 30 fights, which is just unheard of. You know what I mean? He went to the Olympics before having 30 amateur fights. He took the Isaac Chamberlain fight early on. He took Matty Askin fight early on. He's the first Olympian out of the 26 GB team to win a world title, and he wants to do as much as he can in as short a space as possible, which is great, but we need to keep him motivated.
Busy gym for you at the minute. You and I spoke about this last time we saw each other. I don't think you've ever had this many fighters in. You've got the Azim brothers working at Rhodes the same day as Caroline Dubois now as well. How many people do you have in camp at the minute with a fight coming up?
We've got 9 people in the. Well, we've got 9 people in the gym. Fowler's taking a break. Robbie's working towards a December date. Robbie Davies Jr. I've got CBS boxing this weekend. I've got Lawrence Coley just coming back into light training. Daniel Dubois is working for a December date. Caroline and the Azim brothers and Ellie Scottney. Caroline and the Azim brothers are working towards next weekend, but Ellie Scottney and Robbie Davies and Daniel Dubois are all working towards a December date. So it's busy gym, but I enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? And it's great. It's great to have them all in the gym pushing each other on.
Just to touch on Caroline Dubois, how exciting a talent is she? She's been very highly rated, even as just a youth amateur. Now we're seeing her go professional as well. How excited should we be from what you've seen of her in the gym?
I'm massively excited. Honestly, I really believe this is the start of an amazing journey. You know, she had all of the success as a youth in the amateurs, and then she turned. You know, she was a senior, but she hadn't quite found her feet. Then she got chucked into some tournaments, won quite a few fights, and then qualified for the Olympics, but took her first loss, and then lost again in the Olympics. So she's only had a couple of blemishes on her record as an amateur, but she's only 20 years of age. It's remarkable to see what she's achieved. I mean, we went to the I represented her when she was going to get her boxing border control license, and they asked her what her record was, not necessarily what her record, what she won in the amateurs, and it was like a shopping list. She's won so many things, and yes, she got beaten in the Olympics, but she got beaten to the girl that won the gold medal. So she's there. She was one of the best amateurs in the world at 20 years of age. She's still an absolute baby. She's got so much ahead of herself when she comes to physically sort of maturing into the weight, getting that strength. But in terms of skill and balance and everything that you would ask for when it comes to talent, she has it in abundance. So I'm really, really excited about her journey, and next weekend we kick it off.
Sky are putting quite an emphasis on female boxing. They've been building this Savannah Marshall-Clarissa Shields fight. They've signed Caroline. They've also signed Natasha Jonas. Appreciate Caroline's got learning to do, and you'll want to be getting on with that first. But down the line, is that a natural, good domestic fight to make, given they're both under the same platform?
I think it's very early to say, and it kind of discredits Natasha Jonas because she's done a lot. Do you know what I mean? And she's also at the stage of her career that she might want to only have 2 or 3 more, and then go on to commentary. I know that Sky are pretty excited about her as a pundit as well as a boxer. She talks well, and she's great. She's great for the cameras as well. So I'm not sure if we'll ever get that fight, but if it comes about in a couple of years' time and she's still boxing, then that would be, of course, that would be a fantastic fight.
Just touch on a few things away from that. Daniel Dubois, you mentioned we're waiting to hear of a December date potentially. Guessing that'll be out in Tampa. What level of opponent do you want?
Well, look, we don't know where he's going to be out at the moment, but look, I've spoke to Martin Bowers, and Frank Warren and stuff, and we have a plan. Not just about this one. We've got a plan in the next couple of fights. So we're all on the same page, and we're working towards making sure that Daniel is in the right position. Because once again, with these governing bodies, what I was talking about, Lawrence Coley, it's the same with the heavyweight division. You got Usyk, who's a big draw, but he's not the biggest draw. He's not Anthony Joshua. He's not Vladimir Klitschko that was able to keep the governing bodies happy for years and years and years. It's there's a lot of competition out there in the heavyweight division, and there's a lot of money that's floating around, especially now that you've got Tyson Fury, you've got Anthony Joshua, you've got couple of you got Andy Ruiz, you got a lot of big names in the sport. You got Filip Hrgovic as well, Usyk, all these guys, and I think in time the governing bodies will either strip somebody, and we need to be able to be in the right position that that we are. I mean, even Joe Joyce has been sitting there waiting for his WBO shot. There's loads of politics that goes on behind the scenes, and we just need to make sure that we're winning and we're lining ourselves in the right position to fight for a title if it does become vacant.
Shane, I just want to pick your brains on a few fights away from your stable. Next weekend we've got Terence Crawford and Sean Porter for the WBO welterweight title. What kind of problems can Sean Porter present for Terence Crawford?
I think a few years ago Sean Porter would have been a much harder fight for Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford is really matured into the welterweight division. He was a lightweight at one stage, and then he went 140. Now he's up at 147, but he never looked that big. Whereas now he's really filled into the weight. He's always had the frame to be there, but he hadn't looked like he was fully sort of thickened out. Whereas if you look at Errol Spence, he's like boiled down. He's almost like a light middleweight boiled down into welterweight. So I would have always, a few years ago, I was favouring Errol Spence. So. And obviously Sean Porter gave Spence a decent fight, do you know what I mean? But I think Porter's best days are a little bit behind him. He's a good athlete, but he gets hit too much and he's starting to get hurt. I see Terence Crawford potentially stopping him late. I mean, it's a huge shout, but Terence Crawford has a wrestling background. You see it on his Instagram as well. His kids are into wrestling, so he has that physicality, and that's something that Sean Porter was able to impose himself on, and a lot of his opponents to, if he was getting matched when it comes to boxing, he was able to physically impose himself and rough them up, and wear them down. Because I remember having Josh Taylor sparring Sean Porter out in Vegas, and he just said how physically strong he was, but that's something that Terence Crawford has in abundance. He's got that physicality. So, that's what I believe is going to be the outcome of that one. I think he'll either win quite wide on points, or he might stop him late.
Chris Eubank Jr. and Liam Williams was announced for December 11th, I believe it was. So big fight going to be in Cardiff. You've been in the opposite corner to Chris Eubank Jr. Who do you give the edge to and why?
Great fight. What a fight. I'm really excited about that one because, Williams has come up short against Demetrius Andrade, also against Billam-Smith a couple of times, but he rebuilt since then. He sort of, he started to look a lot better, and then he boxed Andrade, and I think Andrade is just never going to be a right style for Liam Williams. Williams is effectively he's a decent counter puncher that's got heavy hands, and he can mix it in close, but he loves guys to walk onto his shots, and I think that's always been a problem of Eubank Jr. He's always walked onto decent shots. So, but one thing he can do is he can take a fantastic shot, Chris Eubank Jr. But he's been up at 168 for a long period of time, and now he's coming back down to 160. I haven't been impressed with him in his last two fights, whether that's him trying things out with Roy Jones Jr. or whether it's the fact that he's brought himself back down to 160. So if you'd have said at 168, I would have favoured Eubank Jr. heavily. But now that it's back down at 160, I think it's a very, very close fight. I'm not going to pick a winner because, Eubank has beat better opponents. So I would favour him, but I also think Liam Williams, when he's backed up against the wall, he really performs. So it's going to be a very interesting fight.
You mentioned it there, the changes in his last two fights. I've seen Chris Eubank Jr. trying to make, maybe that influence of Roy Jones Jr. coming in. What have you made of those changes he's trying to make with his style? Maybe getting away from using his physical attributes quite as much as he was.
Early on in Chris Eubank Jr.'s career, he tried to replicate his dad. He tried to throw singles. Then he realised that he's not a big one-punch knockout artist, so everything he did was in combinations, and he started knocking guys out. It wasn't with one shot; it was with the volume of them, and he would sustain enough pressure, like he did the likes of Nick Blackwell and stuff like that. He looked phenomenal. Something that he lacked against Billy Joe Saunders is the fact that he didn't start his attacks. He didn't sustain his attacks. And he was too lazy in between his combinations. He wasn't set high enough pace. He was trying to do something similar to what his dad was doing, pondering about, touching his gloves and killing the clock. But Eubank Senior always had the ability to do that because he could put you to sleep with one shot. So now he's gone with Roy Jones Jr., the guy that is a phenomenal boxer, great analyst as well when it comes to boxing, but I don't think he quite understands Eubank Jr. because he doesn't like. Look, it's the same with a lot of really top, really good fighters. Even with someone like my dad, he doesn't understand certain people. He used to say to me with someone like. Sometimes my dad would always say to me, "Oh, he needs to put a bit more pace," and I'm thinking, well, that's not him because that's not necessarily what George Groves does. For instance, he's a bit more of a counter puncher, and sometimes boxers can look at what they've done and completely forget about who they're working with, and I think Eubank Jr. has too much respect for someone like. Look, it's great to have he's never had respect for people in his corner, so it's good the fact that he's now got respect for someone working in his corner. I'm not sure if it's suiting his style. So, but he might revert back to shop when it comes to being 4 rounds in and feeling like he's down. He could just bite down his gum shield and just start throw his combinations. But we'll see. Obviously I've been in the corner against Chris Eubank Jr. and one thing that he always lacked was his footwork. He struggles to track moving to the left. So what we did is I watched tape of him and I said he can't step left. He loves to walk people onto a looping right hand, but if you move off his jab, he resets and that gives you 10-15 seconds. So if you watch the fight with George Grove, he just kept moving to the right all the time. Quick tip to Liam Williams. But no, he might be able to adjust to that, but interesting fight, and I think it's just down to it's probably going to be one of those fights that's going to be attritional down the stretch, and who finishes strong.
Last subject I want to ask you about, Canelo Alvarez, undisputed super middleweight champion, 11th round stoppage of Caleb Plant. What do you make of his performance?
Great performance. Bit of a boring fight at times. Do you know what I mean? A bit of a he sort of broke him down well and stopped him. I thought that was going to be the case. I've seen Caleb Plant up close. I know how good he is. He actually was sparring that time that Josh Taylor was sparring Sean Porter. George Groves was sparring Caleb Plant. So on the same days as well. So seen him up close. I thought he was very good, very skillful, but didn't have a lot of power and didn't sort of put enough into it. Was not, even if you lack power, you've still got to commit to your shots, and everything was a little bit too defensive and slow, and the pace. Do you know what I mean? It was all too there's too many gaps in between what he was doing. Someone like Canelo, you can't, if you're going to try and box him, you've got to be busy on the back foot. You can't just touch and do nothing, because that's not going to steal rounds when it comes to you're going up against the face of boxing. You've got to, if you're going to win rounds, you've got to win them convincingly. So he was good at moving around, but there wasn't enough purchase behind the shots, and Canelo did a fantastic job.
It's not going to be so easy to match Canelo in fights people really view as competitive at this point, but what and who is it going to take to beat Canelo Alvarez? I
mean, you've got Charlo, or you've got Benavidez. That's at those weight divisions. Obviously, Charlo's a weight division below, but he's massive for the weight. He could quite easily go up to 168. I know he's a 154, but he's just huge for the weight. So, and then you've got Beterbiev as well, or Beterbiev, whatever you want to call him. I think he beats Beterbiev. I think he does. I think in 2008, Beterbiev was doing 81 kilos. Then he went to 91 kilos for 2012. And then he came back, when he turned pro, he went back down to 81 because of the day before weighing. But Callum Johnson had put him on his backside. And I think just the fact that he's holding his weight, I think he must be about 34, maybe 35. And he's done so much as a pro. I think he's only had about 14 fights or 16 fights or something. He knocked them all out, but I just don't believe he could knock Canelo out. But that's a fight that I'd love to see. I think Canelo could beat him, and I think if he does beat him, I think he would stop him. And then you got Benavidez, who's a fantastic fighter, but there was rumours that he was going to be brought in. Benavidez was being brought in for a training camp before Golovkin for Canelo, and Canelo cancelled it. So they took that as, oh, he's scared of us, and he doesn't want us to be in the camp. But looking at Canelo, I don't think he's scared of bloody anyone.
All right, Shane, thank you for your time as always. Just wrapped up about 20 minutes there, so best luck with everything this weekend. I'm sure we'll catch you soon.